movie begins in the year 1050 with a group of Viking ships heading to raid a monastery in Normandy. Despite the monks' pleas, the Vikings forcibly enter a secret chamber, believing that it holds valuable treasure. However, their assumption proves incorrect as they discover a wolf cub hidden behind a locked door. As compensation for the absent gold and silver, the Vikings decide to take the cub with them to Norway. But by the time their ship reaches the Norwegian coast, all the men are killed by the wolf, which then escapes into the wilderness. The scene then fast forwards 1,000 years, and we are introduced to Tale Berg, a 17-year-old girl living with her family in the Norwegian town of Nybo. The family seems to have recently moved here because of her mother Liv's transfer to the local police force. It is revealed that her father passed away some months ago. Tale indirectly blames her mother for her father's death and does not get along well with her stepfather Arthur. The only person she is still close with and cares for is her deaf little sister named Jenny. One day, while watching a horror movie with Jenny, Tale receives a text message from her high school friend Jonas. He invites her to a party in the woods near the bay, along with other Nybo youth. As a result, she informs her stepfather and sets off on her bicycle. Upon arrival, she starts conversing with Jonas. One of their fellow schoolmates, named Elin, who is the local mayor's daughter, becomes jealous of their closeness and takes Jonas away for a private talk. This makes poor Tale feel unwanted, so she decides to leave early. As she heads back, she stumbles upon Jonas and Elin talking in the woods by the bay. Suddenly, a dark creature attacks Elin, leaving her severely injured. Jonas runs away in fear, while Tale rushes to help Elin, but she gets injured herself as the creature slices her shoulder. Following this, Elin is dragged into the woods, ultimately leading to her demise. Sometime later, the local police and paramedics arrive at the scene. Jonas and Tale receive medical attention, while the police force, led by Tale's mother and Police Chief Eilert, start their investigation. They search for Elin, but only find a blood-covered cell phone and a large torn claw. Later that night, Liv researches the claw's characteristics on the internet, leading her to suspect that the creature may be a wolf. The next day, all people who attended the party are questioned by the police, including Jonas and Tale, as key eyewitnesses. However, they are completely unaware of what kind of creature attacked them. In the meantime, Elin's mutilated body is found deeper in the woods and sent for an autopsy. The examination reveals that something big attacked her, although it is still unclear if it was a wolf. The forensic expert reports that the creature dragged her far enough, as many pieces of flesh are missing from her body. In order to confirm the creature, the police force calls in the help of an expert from the veterinary college named William. Before that, a mysterious one-armed man named Lars visits the police station and asks permission to meet the chief of police. Shortly after, he speaks with Liv and shares his belief that the creature is a werewolf, a hybrid of a human and a wolf. He claims to have dedicated his life to tracking this creature throughout Scandinavia. Lars also asserts that this werewolf comes out during full moon nights and craves human blood. Unfortunately, Liv doesn't believe the man and dismisses him. She believes that he is a drunkard who is talking rubbish. Despite this, Lars gives her a silver bullet, emphasizing that it is the only weapon capable of killing the beast. In the evening, Jonas summons Tale to a restaurant and apologizes for involving her in the incident. In response, Tale comforts him, explaining that no one should bear blame for what occurred. After a brief conversation, Tale walks out and stumbles upon Elin's friends, who accuse her of cowardice and failing to help their friend. This deeply upsets Tale, prompting her to cycle back home. Seeing her in a disturbed state, Liv attempts to talk to her, but Tale doesn't want to listen. The following day, William arrives at the police station and begins his examination of Elin's corpse. Based on the injuries of the victim and the claw found on the scene, the vet concludes that it is an unusually large wolf. With this information in hand, Liv and Eilert hire a hunting force and set out into the woods with the intent of killing the creature, unless it turns out to be a hot teen with a six-pack. Upon their arrival, the hunting force, under the joint leadership of Liv and Eilert, begins their search with the help of a tracking dog. As they venture deeper into the forest, they stumble upon a headless corpse, which is identified as an asylum seeker. Recognizing the severity of the situation, Liv calls for additional backup. She assigns 2 hunters to remain and guard the body until backup arrives, while she and the rest of the team proceed further. After a while of walking, the group comes across an abandoned cave. Liv decides to investigate it, so she cautiously makes her way inside. She soon discovers a dark mine shaft with a ladder that leads downward. As she descends, she is momentarily startled when she finds the missing head of the body they found earlier. Meanwhile, the hunters guarding the corpse hear a menacing roar. Before they can react, the creature launches a surprise attack, resulting in their unfortunate deaths. The rest of the team team hears their screams, and soon after, the creature closes in on them. It claims the lives of 2 more members of the hunting party and inflicts serious injuries upon Eilert. Liv hurriedly climbs out of the mine, but comes face to face with the creature at the top of the ladder. At this moment, the true nature of the creature is revealed. It is indeed a wolf. The wolf lunges at her, causing her to tumble back into the mine shaft. This injures her wrist, prompting her to scream in pain. As Liv crawls away from the advancing wolf, she manages to grab her gun and fires at it, but the bullet appears to have no effect on it. Soon, Liv runs out of ammo, leaving her at the mercy of the wolf. But just then, she remembers the silver bullet given to her by Lars. Acting swiftly, she loads it into her gun and fires at the wolf, killing it once and for all. In the next scene, Liv wakes up in the hospital, where her injured wrist is placed in a cast. Eilert, on the other hand, is revealed to be in a coma, and tragically, none of the other hunters survived. In the midst of all these events, Tail begins experiencing peculiar dreams and visions, causing considerable mental distress. One day at school, her hearing senses suddenly sharpen, allowing her to hear even the sound of Jonas sketching with his pencil. This leaves her at great unease, prompting her to hastily retreat to the restroom. Even there, she hears a crying voice coming from behind a restroom door. As she cautiously approaches to investigate, she encounters the apparition of Eileen, accusing her of letting her die. However, the figure vanishes, revealing it to be her hallucination. Later that night, Tail experiences sleepwalking, but thankfully, Jenny guides her safely back to her bed. The next day, William examines the wolf's body in the laboratory. After a thorough assessment, he informs Liv that the regular lead bullets she used had no effect on the wolf, despite hitting its heart and lungs. The only fatal injury inflicted upon the wolf came from the silver bullet which she fired last. This revelation shocks Liv, and she realizes that it is indeed a werewolf. That night, Tail receives a text message from Jonas, asking if she wants to meet. In response, she sneaks out of her house and meets him at a viewpoint. As they converse, Tail confides in her friend about her recent unsettling experiences. She mentions that she has never felt this scared in all her life. Jonas attempts to comfort her, encouraging her to move on from the traumatic incident. He also reassures her that the threat has been wiped out. Their conversation gradually takes a romantic turn, and they end up sharing a romantic kiss. After a while, Jonas receives a call from his father. While he steps away to answer the phone, Tail has her gaze locked on the full moon, which traditionally triggers werewolf transformations. She starts feeling uneasy and eventually turns into a more animalistic version of herself, with sharp teeth and animal-like instincts. When Jonas returns to her after her call, he discovers her on the ground. Before she can warn him, she loses control and kills him. The following morning, Tail awakens in her house's garage and is scared to find blood smeared across her face. She also vomits up a piece of her friend's finger, indicating that she devoured him the previous night. However, she has no recollection of what transpired or what she did to her friend. Troubled by this, she heads to the viewpoint, only to discover that the police are in the process of removing Jonas's mutilated body. Later, after an examination of the body, William concludes that the injuries sustained by Jonas are similar to those of Eileen, but it was caused by a smaller creature. Following this, Liv decides to seek additional information about werewolves from Lars. The latter explains that once a human undergoes the transformation into a wolf, they no longer have any humanity left in them. The only way to break the curse is to put an end to the entire bloodline of werewolves. On the other hand, Tail realizes that she has now become a threat to everyone around her, so she makes the decision to leave. Unfortunately, while on the bus, the full moon breaks through the clouds, triggering her transformation into a full-fledged wolf. Tail then proceeds to attack the other passengers, which causes the bus to crash in a tunnel. Before long, Liv arrives at the scene and encounters survivors running away from the bus. She grabs her weapon and cautiously approaches the wreckage, but the wolf appears to have already departed, leaving behind a scene of carnage. During her brief inspection of the bus, Liv spots her daughter's torn clothing as well as her locket. Just then, William arrives at the scene with shocking information. He explains that after analyzing the wolf's body, he has detected human DNA. This confirms that they are dealing with an actual werewolf. Hearing this, Liv realizes that her daughter has now become the new werewolf. In the next scene, Tail, in her fully transformed state, returns home and approaches Jenny. The two come face to face, but the werewolf seems to recognize her sister. Nevertheless, Tail's stepfather intervenes and fights her using a lamp as a makeshift weapon. He manages to take Jenny to their car and speed away, but unfortunately, Arthur appears to have been bitten by the wolf during the confrontation, causing him to lose a lot of blood. Due to this, he eventually passes out behind the wheel, resulting in a deadly car crash. As the crowd notices the accident, they approach the crashed vehicle to help, but they soon fall victim to Tail. The werewolf then goes on a murder spree and devours their flesh. Witnessing this tragic scene, Jenny takes matters into her own hands and bravely walks towards Tail. She attempts to calm her sister down, and for a moment, she is successful in doing so. But soon after, Liv and William arrive on the scene, with William using a tranquilizer dart to subdue the wolf, while Liv rushes to grab Jenny. The trio then seeks refuge in an empty store to protect themselves. As they struggle to keep Tail out, Liv orders Jenny to hide behind the counter. Just then, Lars arrives in his RV and crashes through the store's front entrance in an attempt to hit Tail. This reckless action leaves Liv, William, and Lars seriously injured, but Tail is still unharmed. The werewolf proceeds to kill Lars and then launches an attack on Liv. Liv uses all her strength to hold Tail off by using her wrist cast as a shield. As the werewolf bites down on it, Liv orders an injured William to shoot another tranquilizer dart. Realizing that William is in no condition to help, Jenny takes the dart and stabs it into her sister's side, putting an end to the attack. In the aftermath, Tail is seen confined in the veterinary clinic in an unconscious state. Liv pays a visit and apologizes to her for not taking proper care of her. But now that Tail poses a great threat, Liv reluctantly loads her gun with a silver bullet and places it against Tail's neck.